Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 665 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We will be breaking down everything that happened this week across both NXT and AEW, but not only that, this will indeed serve as your 2024 AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview, where we will go through every single match on the card as we take a deep dive into AEW's penultimate pay-per-view of the entire. As you heard, it is the 665th episode of this podcast, which means our next show, your 2024 AEW Full Gear Instant Analysis, will indeed be episode 666, the mark of the Beast Mortos. We have a ton to get to on today's show. We're not going to waste any time getting to it. So allow the Silver King to remind you off the top that the Getting Over Wrestling Podcast
is all about the five.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast, and follow us on Blue Sky at Getting Over. The latter two for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. On Twitter and Blue Sky are where you can send us questions and comments for the show. You can also email them to us, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. And by the way, if you want to sponsor the show or get some advertising, you can hit us up there as well, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. But please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major TV show, and exclusive news analysis posts weekly. You get all of it at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. A little bit of a teaser for you. Next week is Thanksgiving and Black Friday. There's a chance that something special happens with buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And on the note of the holidays, you may be wondering what our podcast publishing schedule will be like for next week. We will have all of that information for you either Monday on social media or Tuesday on the WWE edition of our show. Make sure you listen to this week's WWE episode if you have not already. As far as today's show goes, of course, we are talking NXT and AEW with your AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview coming in the main event. There will be timestamps in the episode description, so you can skip around to each section if you so desire. If you're listening to us closer to the weekend and you want the Ultimate Preview for AEW Full Gear, you, of course, will be able to jump to that. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. So let's kick it off, as we usually do, with NXT. Andre Chase fought Ridge Holland for the #1 contendership for Trick Williams' NXT title. The stipulation here was that Chase U would be forced to disband if he loses. Technically, it would be that Chase would no longer be able to, I guess, have an on-screen relationship with Thea Hale, Riley Osborne, and Duke Hudson. I don't think they technically said that Chase U would have to completely go away. Chase spoke to his students in 2 pre-tapes, recounting all the amazing memories with the students supporting him. Then he did a fake out that he was going soft before giving a fiery speech, declaring he would be the mother effing champion. The students went wild for that. Holland later bragged about systematically taking apart Chase U in a backstage interview, though he gave Andre credit for having more guts than brains. The hard cam side was covered in Chase U shirts, so fans must have gotten some freebies, which was cool, and Trick joined commentary for the match. Holland pulled up the ringside mat, with Chase hitting a cannonball off the apron onto him. The referee stopped Ridge from using a chair, which allowed him to low blow Chase and hit the Redeemer, only for Duke Hudson to pull the referee out of the ring. Hudson continued brawling with Holland, only to get tackled, actually lifted and driven is really the best way to put it. Through the breakaway crow's nest base, Thea Hale got in Ridge's face only for Riley Osborne to take out both of them, actually, with a tope. Holland threw him out of the ring onto the exposed concrete. Chase U stomps and a corner powerbomb followed for a false finish. Holland caught Chase flying at him in a crossbody, tossing him in his arms into a second Redeemer to get the win, leaving the crowd stunned and booing. All of Chase U was either injured or crying, with Chase himself completely distraught. It was a dramatic conclusion that was somewhat ruined by a small group of fans chanting, "Na, na, 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 hey, hey, goodbye," which, if a heel lost, cool, this is a big-time babyface that everyone was cheering for. It was out of place. It somewhat ruined the drama of the moment, which was just unfortunate because it was built up so well. Now, this match, I probably needed another 5 minutes of Chase and Holland going at it one-on-one to really ratchet up the drama and excitement. But the fans did an immense job going apeshit for Chase U, all the assistant spots, ebbing and flowing with the ups and the downs of the finish. Holland was put over crazy strong here. Not only having Chase basically beat on his own with the low blow, of course, but basically destroying all of Chase U in one fell swoop before beating Chase clean. That's an all-in type of booking with Ridge that I can't even say I expected. And while he's a powerhouse, I'm not sure his position on the brand right now or his ceiling long-term is deserving of such a push. It was satisfying for the story and for the gimmick to come full circle, and it was satisfying for Holland to look strong, going up and taking down all of them. I just wish it would have been a little bit more difficult. Chase tweeted after the show, thanking Chase U for everything, saying, "I wouldn't be here without you," which does make it sound as if he's staying around. He's not leaving or anything, and that's obviously good if so. Maybe they're going to reform Chase U with new talent as the others split up and do their own thing. That would be an interesting way to push this forward, though it is a little bit strange because you're saying Chase can't interact with all these people. It's not like Raw and SmackDown where he can go to a different brand. They're all stuck there together. They're all in catering and backstage together. So what is he not allowed to shake Hudson's hand? It's just kind of a odd stipulation, all things considered. Chase U could, of course, simply end, which would be sad. But the gimmick has been so strong that maybe they can come up with something to replace it. I don't know what Chase would do without Chase U. And I know you could just change his gimmick. And I think his indie name was Harlem Bravo or Bravado or something like that. I don't totally remember. Maybe he changes his name and has a crisis of conscience or something. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do, but I am curious. And that is what keeps you tuned in. It also truly speaks volumes to how affected the fans were by Chase U losing here. That speaks volumes. It really shows how well NXT books its characters and its groups, where a cursing professor who wrestles in a red sweater losing a match creates an emotional reaction from a significant portion of the fan base. Now, as far as Holland is concerned, Trick Ridge, it might wind up being pretty rough from a title picture perspective. I assume it's going to be the title match on Deadline, and it's I don't know that anyone's tuning in for that. The Iron Survivor Challenge matches, of course, are going to carry that show. But we're just going to have to see how this all goes down in the coming weeks. As we've said, the men's main event division in NXT is in dire straits if really your best or your only option at this juncture, the challenge for the title, someone who kind of hasn't already, is Ridge Holland, of all people, who you're kind of boosting into this main event spot by taking down an entire university, when otherwise I don't necessarily know that he could even be close to this, just based on his performance in ring and on the mic. So that wraps up kind of the main event segment overall. We got a lot more to talk about, though, from NXT. Julia got a promo package saying moving to America has been overwhelming with her learning a new culture and all that type of stuff, but NXT is learning now about the beautiful madness. She shared her background, saying she learned to fight from scrapping without any formal training. She mixes chaos and creativity in her work. This was a perfect way to provide a bit more background about Julia and help endear her to audiences. It's been so far so good with her presentation. As always, we need a reason to care about the characters, and I love that NXT took that step. Kalani Jordan watched this segment and asked for a qualifying match against Julia next week. I still don't understand this gimmick with Robert Stone and Stevie Turner, who for some reason continues to not wrestle despite seemingly being cleared. I don't know why both of them are needed, let alone one of them are needed when Ava herself is a young general manager. I get they want to play the gimmick that she feels overwhelmed at times and like, okay, fine, but you don't need two assistants helping you when they could both be better used in a variety of areas. Turner wrestling and Stone actually managing someone. Wouldn't Robert Stone legitimately be great with Chelsea Green and Piper Niven on the main roster? It just makes way too much sense. I don't understand what they are doing with him at all. Kalani, look, there's just a lack of believability with her. Like even when she speaks in a backstage segment like this, it feels forced. And I don't know that can be rectified. It has to be. Get her an acting coach. Like, there's got to be something you can do to make Kalani Jordan work. I'm not going to tell you to stop trying to make Lonnie happen because it's not going to happen. I think it will happen. I think it can happen. But they just got to do a better job with her. They're not helping her right now, both in ring and out of the ring. Let's move to all the Iron Survivor Challenge qualifying matches. We'll start with Stephanie Vaquer against Jada Parker. Vaquer got a tape promo believing she's the best in the world and the only woman who can dethrone Roxanne Perez. Talk about an all-star qualifier with Vaquer and Parker. Parker caught a springboard for a backbreaker, adding a backstabber later. Vaquer came back with a lifted knee, eat defeat, a Meteora, and her thigh driver. Parker hit a Falcon Arrow and a front slam, but as she was going for Hypnotic, Lola Vice came out with a brick, which distracted her. Vaquer took advantage with a super kick and her package backbreaker for the win. This was probably Jada's best non-stipulation singles match to this point. Stephanie is bringing the best out of everyone she faces, leading to a fantastic showing for Jada here as she continues to learn and grow in the ring. We wondered last week whether Vaquer and Julia would be involved in this match. It does now appear that might be the case, and obviously Iron Survivor will be better with them involved. The Vice distraction was super cheap. I'd have much preferred Vaquer to just go out and beat Parker clean. I get it. They're among the top women in the division. Sometimes you just need to allow people to get beat. And she's a neophyte. Vaquer's a veteran. I know she might be new to the brand, but everyone understands how great of a wrestler she is. Just let Jada lose. It's really that easy. Despite that, really strong work here. Parker again showed out, as I said, 3.5 stars and a B, pretty close to that B+, but the Lola stuff and a couple spots in the match took me away from it. Zarya fought Ren Sinclair. Charlie Dempsey gassed up Ren after some early adversity. Zarya hit two joined suplexes, stared down Dempsey as Sinclair took advantage of the tope suicida. Zarya really sold for Ren during this match. She ultimately hit a nice spear and an F5 for the win. Still frustrated that neither her finisher nor that of Vaquer have a name. It was a nice showing for both ladies. Not as strong as Vaquer and Parker by direct comparison, but Zarya needed to be more dominant just given her size and overall gimmick. It definitely looks like this Iron Survivor is going to be absolutely loaded. And normally I would say, well, you have to main event the women over the men, but the men's match looks like it's going to be loaded as well in a completely different way. We had Eddie Thorpe against Nathan Frazier. Axiom was trying to bend Frazier's ear on his way to the ring, with Frazier again dismissing him, saying he's not worried about their competition. This, as every contending team wound up ringside for what I would say was really no logical reason, just because the tag team champions were out there. Frazier was explosive throughout, hitting his springboard inverted DDT, standing shooting star press in succession. Frazier got distracted while on the top rope. That allowed Thorpe to hit a full release avalanche German suplex and a brainbuster. That got a false finish. All the teams began brawling, with Frazier choosing to save Axiom with the Swanton Bomb rather than take out Thorpe. Thorpe booted Axiom in the face, really for no reason at all, after the fact. Frazier hit a twisting neckbreaker and Phoenix splash right on his head for the win. That shit had to hurt, no question. Can't imagine Thorpe was too pleased taking that move. The brawling continued in and around the ring, with the crowd and commentary going wild. This tag team division, as we've discussed, is immensely mid. But generating excitement through chaos, that is a tale as old as time in professional wrestling. That was accomplished here. And it was done with a terrific swerve in the match. Once Frazier saved Axiom, the obvious expectation is that he would lose and then blame Axiom for his loss. Instead, you had Thorpe boot his partner in the face for no reason. Maybe he's getting a much needed and long overdue heel turn. That was my thought in the moment. And then you had Frazier actually come out on top. Completely counter to expectation. And for a great reason also, because Frazier in the men's match with Javon Evans and Wes Lee is going to be absolutely wild. Thorpe would have brought nothing to the table comparatively in that match. This was an awesome opener, super hype, the right winner, and maybe some storytelling coming out of it as well. 3.5 stars and a B. Would have been higher without the distractions and the interference because these two were cooking and Thorpe looked great. When you allow Eddie to actually wrestle more than 3 or 4 minutes, he impresses, especially when you put him with someone like Frazier who can do everything that he can do. So give Thorpe more opportunities, probably turn him heel, and just give him something to chew on, man. He should probably be in the North American title picture, going up as a challenger against Tony D'Angelo, or something like that. So that's my hope for him. Ethan Page got a promo package saying no one wants him in the Iron Survivor Challenge, which is exactly why he's going to qualify and win the entire thing. Axiom backstage was confident Page would not qualify because he's going to fight him. Frazier was shocked and seemingly angry, but when Axiom explained himself, Frazier was supportive. Then they realized they might actually have to wind up fighting when it's all over. I'm sure Page is ultimately going to win. Having a veteran like him in the match does make sense, even if Axiom would have been much more exciting along with the guys we already mentioned who have qualified. Page just cannot win the Iron Survivor. So as long as he doesn't win the match, him being involved in it is completely fine. Let's move to the Men's North American Championship. Speaking of, D'Angelo defending against Brooks Jensen. D'Angelo saw his spinebuster get countered into a codebreaker, but he caught Jensen running back at him with a spinebuster to win. Shirtless, sleeveless, jacketed, Sean Spears came in afterward to shake Tony's hand, only to have Brooks stick out his knee, which he was selling earlier in the match, and the heels stood tall. D'Angelo later demanded to Ava that he defend his title against Spears. She agreed if he got cleared. Thorpe came in demanding his result get reversed due to interference. When Ava denied him, he juxtaposed his situation to that of D'Angelo, and he stormed out angry. You know how I feel about Jensen. We've talked about it many times. He just does not have it. And overall, this is an immensely weak feud for D'Angelo, coming out of a strong title win against Obafemi. It just speaks to the state of this men's singles division right now. But even with that being the case, there are far better options out there. I suppose many of them are currently involved with Iron Survivor, sure, but you could find someone more interesting than Spears and Jensen to be feuding with D'Angelo coming immediately after beating Femi. The backstage stuff with both guys was completely sensible. This gave more credence to the idea that I proposed a moment ago of Thorpe turning heel, which would truly revitalize him and his character. Plus, NXT does need some more male heels on the roster right now. In fact, a D'Angelo-Thorpe feud with Thorpe in that heel role, and there's some really interesting stuff that they could do based on their backgrounds to kind of play it up. That could hit. Fatal Influence went to the ring for a group promo saying NXT is the strongest women's division in the world, and they're now at the top of it, given Fallon Henley is the women's North American champion. Henley said she would not rest on her laurels, and she decided to issue an open challenge for next week, given time will be needed to find a suitable opponent. Out came the Meta Girls, saying they'll be getting a piece of it. Nikita Lyons told them to get in the back of the line. Talk about getting in the back of the line. Nikita, get your ass in the back of the line. Then Adriana Rizzo attacked her from behind, and a half dozen other women similarly ran out to brawl. Henley was left alone when suddenly Tatum Paxley slid out from underneath the ring, catching her in that awesome finisher that, again, doesn't have a name, while Henley was still holding the North American title, which was actually a pretty cool visual. I love when NXT does these chaotic open challenge segments. This is how open challenges should exist. Hey, does anyone want a piece of me and a chance at my title? 20 people running out to try to get the match. Like, if you're watching backstage, whether you're in catering, the locker room, whatever, you should be sprinting your ass to the ring to claim that open challenge opportunity. I do prefer when it directly leads to a person challenging immediately, like you sprint to get to the ring, whoever gets in there first, the bell sounds, the match begins. I do prefer that, but this was slightly different to do it next week, and that's okay. I was actually hoping Paxley would not be the challenger because she should be in a developed feud with Henley that ultimately leads to her winning the title. But unfortunately, it was announced for next week. Likely throwing her away on an open challenge, that would be frustrating. You guys just know how I feel about that. Would make much more sense if like one of the Meta Girls fought her or any of the other women on the roster fought her and Paxley was like lurking the entire time, almost cost her the match, and ended up being the next major challenger. That's at least the way the Silver King would book it. I'll save my pessimism for next week. We'll see how it plays out. It's just clear to a ton of folks right now that Paxley has a high ceiling, and WWE, NXT, Shawn Michaels, whoever is booking it right now is just not allowing her to reach it, which is super frustrating. Deion Lennox and Brinley Reese fought Ashanti, The Adonis, and Carmen Petrovic in a mixed tag team match. Pretty interesting. WWE does not do many mixed tags, and they did one on Raw and another on NXT. I don't believe one is scheduled or would necessarily make sense for SmackDown, but I'd be curious to see if we actually end up getting one. Lennox and Reese were in Oregon State gear, pumping each other up backstage before the match. I understood why Lennox was wearing it because he's a Beaver. Reese went to Sacramento State. Adonis and Petrovic later worked out in Washington State gear, with each acknowledging the other looked good. Adonis went to Maryland. He's a Terrapin. So, I mean, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing a college t-shirt that was not my own school, but the whole gimmick was promoting the Pac-12 game on the CW this weekend. Despite wearing the shirts, none of the four wrestlers wore the same colors in their gear, including Lennox, who probably should have been wearing an OSU design because he could have used that long term because he actually went there and probably likes those colors. There was a camera on the ring apron for this match, which made it annoying as hell to watch. Adonis got slapped while trying to get a kiss on the cheek from Reese, who took a kick to end it. Adonis and Carmen locked hands, kind of feeling each other. The referee broke that to raise their arms, which I thought was pretty funny. Adonis and Petrovic continued flirting backstage. They were seemingly about to kiss when Lyons interrupted, saying she was waiting for a text back. Obviously, Carmen stormed out. Unfortunately, the match was a super poor segment. I had much higher hopes coming in. I don't even understand what they're doing with Deion Lennox. They keep putting him on TV. The guy has a great look. He seems super athletic, but they're not letting him wrestle and impress anybody. It's really frustrating. So the match was nothing. It was worth noting that Adonis was kind of hysterical, the way he acted and sold throughout the entire thing. All in all, weak promotion for a game that itself could have been stronger. The promotion aspect is what I'm talking about. And lastly, Lexis King backstage was explaining his newfound positive attitude to Yoshiki Inamura, who just gave him a thumbs up after intently listening. Josh Briggs made sure he was good. As Inamura said, NXT was a crazy place to experience as the camera panned away from him, showing all the tag teams brawling. Inamura said he likes that kind of crazy. I hope they're involved in this tournament. Otherwise, their inclusion as like the non-fighting party in all these segments is kind of odd. I also like what we've gotten from Inamura so far. It's not a lot, right? But him like acknowledging that NXT is crazy and the production work of like showing that and then having him enjoy it after the fact. I just thought it was really smartly done. And it was a nice way to kind of frame him as like a foreign talent coming in on an excursion, not completely knowing what to expect. Again, with Briggs, this is a guy I truly believe could be in the main event on NXT. He could be someone, maybe even, who takes the title off Trick Williams in a few months, like maybe 6 months, maybe not a few. But I could see that actually being plausible. Unfortunately, they're just not giving him much to do since returning, but I can understand why Inamura might need someone who he knows to work with, given he is indeed on an excursion. So that wraps up NXT this week. Obviously, there was a ton to talk about as usual. I thought it was a successful episode, super entertaining 2 hours. For those of you who listen to the breakdowns and don't watch the show, I don't know what I need to do to convince you to watch NXT. It's not like I badly want to go out on a limb for a product, but I truly believe that the listeners of this show would enjoy watching the antics of WWE adjacent wrestlers who eventually will be on the main roster for 2 hours on a broadcast network. I just think it's super fun. So again, I encourage you to watch NXT. I will certainly say that this was not the best episode. I thought last week was far better. This was probably, I don't know, bottom 3 episodes since moving to the CW. But to be fair, most of them have been pretty damn good. So a bottom 3 since moving to the CW is probably still one of like the top 50% of the episodes all year, I guess is probably the best way that I can put it. Now, before we move over to breaking down AEW, normally if we have a ratings discussion on the show, we would save it for the very end. However, we do want to make sure the AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview is the main event of today's episode. So let's actually get to that ratings talk briefly right now. NXT on Tuesday pulled in 672,000 viewers in a 0.19 demo. Third straight week being up in viewership and demo from the prior week. And this was the third best demo in 8 weeks on the CW, also the fourth best viewership. So right in the middle, which is pretty much the way I was describing the quality of the episode. Definitely trending in the right direction, and we will see if WWE can keep up that momentum. For AEW Dynamite, it pulled in 640,000 viewers, and a 0.20 demo. So this was the go-home show for AEW Full Gear, and it was down 26,000 viewers and 2/100ths in the demo from last week, which is frankly surprising. It's the 8th straight week under 700,000 viewers, the 17th straight week under 0.25 as a demo, and I use that as a note because they were regularly getting that or better. They were hitting 3s in the first 7 months of the year. Beyond that, it's the 3rd straight week that NXT had higher viewership than AEW Dynamite, including 1 week that was obviously head-to-head on Wednesday. That week, they literally won a battle head-to-head, both in viewership and demo. When they operate on different nights, it is not a win or a loss. We've said this for years. They don't compete directly against each other, except for the rare occasions when they literally do. But it is notable to compare the ratings trends for both of these shows. Now, with Dynamite and AEW, none of this is a huge concern because it did just sign a brand new TV deal. It does continue to have me scratching my head about why WWE accepted so little for NXT comparatively to what Dynamite is getting when WWE is the leader in the marketplace. It similarly has me scratching my head about why Warner Brothers Discovery paid AEW so much for its media rights when these are the numbers being delivered. But again, deal is signed, money is coming in. What's of bigger concern likely is the attendance for AEW, with many episodes of Dynamite now regularly doing around 2,500 fans. I mean, the go-home for the penultimate pay-per-view of the year, with stars advertised and a pretty strong card overall, didn't crack 3,000 fans on Wednesday night. And I'm glad that AEW has released a list of smaller venues that it's going to start running for Dynamite. That's going to make TV way better. But every possible verifiable sign is currently showing declining interest in the product, steeply declining interest in the product. And they have got to figure out some way to pick that up. Just bringing in former WWE stars and keeping their gimmicks, that is not really going to cut it. So let's go ahead and move over to our breakdown of AEW this week. First, we're going to cover everything that does not directly have to do with Full Gear. And then on the back end, we will have your AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview, picks, predictions, breakdowns of everything. There's 2 interesting items I wanted to discuss off the top here. The first is that Kenny Omega has apparently been cleared to return to the ring from his diverticulitis surgery, which is obviously incredible news. What makes it interesting, though, is that Omega's return match is not going to come under the solo banner of his full-time employer, AEW, but rather at the Wrestle Dynasty show being co-promoted with New Japan Pro Wrestling and being held in Tokyo the night after Wrestle Kingdom 19. And to this point, the entire storyline has been built either in Japan or online, with Omega not appearing on AEW TV since that brief return where he got sent back out with injury. And there's 2 sides of the coin to this. For one, given the way Tony Khan took so much talent from New Japan, I'm not sure whether this is a make good, but it's certainly nice for New Japan to get something out of this relationship for a change. On the other hand, Omega is the return people have been anticipating for AEW. And it is struggling, as we just mentioned, in ratings and attendance. They really could have used that boost on TV or at Full Gear, then moving on to TV, even if they had to promote it ahead of time. Now, I presume that we eventually will see Omega on AEW TV specifically promoting Wrestle Dynasty at some point over the next month, but it's also possible we don't, because it doesn't fit at all into the storyline that wrote him off of the show. In fact, that doesn't exist anymore. Those surprise and return aspects of him showing up are also gone because he's already come back once. And let's not forget that Omega is not coming back to combat the Elite, which excommunicated him and tried a hostile takeover of the company, but he's coming back to fight Gabe Kidd, someone who is largely unknown to the AEW audience, at least in kayfabe. So, like I said at the top, real interesting development overall. The second item I wanted to discuss was Tony Khan not only making a huge deal of paying to license the song November Rain by Guns N' Roses, but promising to air it in full on Collision. The final 7 minutes of the show was a video package to this track using old footage to build to Full Gear. No new footage, no new promos, nothing. The diehard fans I saw went nuts about this, talking about it being great and how cool it was that Tony paid to license this song. It was fine. Like, it seemed like an immense waste of money to license this song solely for a video to run in the least watched segment of a Saturday night show. Tony can throw around his wealth and it won't affect his bottom line one iota. The man is a billionaire. Tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars are relatively meaningless. That's not my business. I'm just saying, I don't understand why it was such a big deal. That's all. Moving to what happened on the shows, 6 of 15 matches this week were storyline relevant, including a tournament bout. That's 40%. I suppose it's on the higher end of the average, but extremely rough and frustrating for what was essentially a go-home week for a pay-per-view, given the show is this Saturday. Not putting together a stronger build for Full Gear is exactly why there are 2,500 fans at these shows and not 6,000 or so like there probably should be if the product was booked better. So let's go to what I thought was the best match from Dynamite. Darby Allin against Claudio Castagnoli. Claudio yelled at Darby in, I presume, German during a pre-tape promo, with Darby responding that he would take the Death Riders down one by one. Claudio grabbed Darby over the barricade, walked him up the steel steps for a suplex into the ring. Allin came back with 2 of his tope suicidas in a code red, but Claudio swung him into the steel steps. I am loving that spot the last couple of weeks. Castagnoli then stood on the announce table and he press-tossed Allin off of it over the barricade into the timekeeper's table, which did not break. He obviously beat the count at 9.9. Not as obvious was Castagnoli taking his head off with a lariat immediately for the win. Cameras almost immediately cut away. They did not sell the impact of the loss on Darby, who is one of the most notable babyfaces in the entire company, possibly the next champion, being beaten squeaky clean by Claudio. This was a major notable result. Darby losing to Mox, a multi-time champion, it's one thing. Getting dropped clean by Claudio, who has really done dick in AEW outside of winning the ROH title, which no one really cares about, that's quite another. This is a guy who drew Kazuchika Okada, lost to Pac, Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay, and Hangman Page all this year without any significant wins otherwise. He's won singles matches, just not against anyone meaningful. That's something that should be explored by commentary. Is Darby lost? What does this mean for him going forward? Should Claudio be up for the TNT title or the international title or something? He just beat a former multi-time TNT champion. We should have seen Allin emoting on the canvas, taking stock of what just happened. Instead, nothing. They cut away. I did more to sell it here than they did on Dynamite to tell you that it was important. Now, all that notwithstanding, Claudio over Darby was 100% the right decision. You can't have Allin be up against adversity and have him beat everyone who is not Mox. Maybe he can beat Wheeler Yuta, okay. He should probably lose to Pac as well. On top of that, this match was a blast, just given some of the aforementioned spots. 3.5 stars and a B just because it was spot heavy and the wrestling itself, I'm not saying it wasn't good, but it wasn't memorable in any way. It wasn't something that I would say you have to go see this, but you should go see the highlights of Claudio swinging him into the steps and then throwing him from one table onto the other. That's worthwhile. On Collision, Mina Shirakawa fought Harley Cameron. Harley on Rampage shook her chest and then tried playing a guitar before getting cut off. Then they both shook their chests at each other before the bell. This was more even than you would expect, with Harley getting some really nice offensive sequences in. Mina took advantage of a referee distraction after Cameron tried to cheat, hitting a spinning backfist and glamorous driver to win. Harley then shook her chest while sad, walking to the back after losing, I guess because Mina Shirakawa shook her chest because that's what she does when she wins. Besides that bullshit, which if you counted was 5 times, this was decently entertaining. Cameron continues to impress with her overall character. Shirakawa is quality in the ring. Mina later, in a segment that was clearly taped earlier, said she was excited for Mariah May's match on Collision. And that match was for the Women's Championship, May defending against Anna Jay, no disqualification. Taya Valkyrie offered protection that Jay denied on Rampage, so she, I guess, has a feud set up with them after the expected loss, which is a positive. Anna is just so unconvincing on the mic. Everything she says sounds completely robotic. It's super unfortunate. All the weapons were out for this. May took a gory bomb into a leaning ladder before powerbombing Jay off the ropes into a prop table. Mariah then got superplexed onto a barricade piece propped by chairs, which was a really cool looking spot. Anna tried to choke out the champion with what I believe was fake barbed wire, so May sprayed something in her face and hit Storm Zero on a chair to retain. Taya and Deonna Purrazzo were angry at the result backstage, and then you had Mina run out to celebrate with Mariah, though she didn't want her attacking Anna any further. This was easily the best of their 3 matches. AEW generally does hardcore women's fights well. This absolutely could have worked on Full Gear. It certainly should not have been buried on Collision. I know it was originally set for Dynamite, and they had to move it due to someone's illness. I don't know why they didn't just save it for the Go Home Dynamite. Just push it an entire week. Really strange decision. 3.75 stars B+, somewhat similar to what we got with Jada Parker and Lola Vice on NXT all those weeks ago. On Collision, Powerhouse Hobbs beat Bulk Bronson in 4 minutes before destroying the other jobbers. Remember, he returned as a face. Those were other faces, but he destroyed them anyway. On Rampage, Ricochet beat Dante Martin in 10 minutes. 2 baby faces fighting for no reason. On Dynamite, Will Ospreay, Ricochet, Hobbs, and Mark Davis fought the Don Callis family. Hobbs went to the back with a knee injury like a minute into the match. Lance Archer put it between the ring and steel steps, and Ospreay got thrown into the steps. My presumption is they're setting up an Ospreay feud while taking a face out of the match to give that team an out, but Hobbs limped from the back just minutes later and was back in the match. Ospreay kicked out a blue thunderbomb. Despite selling the knee, Hobbs was able to run into all 4 corners for lariats. Kyle Fletcher pulled Davis into his path for a hidden blade, with Konosuke Takeshita pinning him after a pump knee to the face. The Hobbs spot was totally unnecessary. The match itself was messy until they started spamming signatures in the latter stages. Ricochet did nothing notable, which was particularly surprising. Really, it was a vehicle for Ospreay Fletcher without getting into Takeshita Ricochet, which I presume is going to happen on TV coming up, or maybe they're saving it for World's End. I'm not even really sure. There's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't live up to the talent level of everyone in the match. On Rampage, Commander beat Rocky Romero in 10 minutes. 2 baby faces fighting for no reason. MVP was impressed watching Commander from the backstage monitor. He later said some talent need opportunities while others need to be beaten down and built up. So on Collision, we had Shelton Benjamin beat Commander in 10 minutes. Saw crazy high praise for this online since it was taped, but it was a B match, 3.5 stars. Like, the crowd really loved it. Perhaps that's why it was overrated, but it was fun. Shelton again looked good, being given a chance to face a talented competitor. Commander's selling was great, especially on a thrust kick late in the match. Alex Abrahantes stopped Benjamin from ripping off Commander's mask, so MVP knocked him down, and I guess there's nothing that's going to happen coming out of that. On Rampage, LFI beat a couple jobbers in 3 minutes. On Collision, the Acclaimed had another backstage promo. The guys were slightly at odds. MVP came in speaking only to Max Caster, giving him advice and wishing him luck. So the match on that show was Acclaimed against LFI for a spot in the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Championship match. Caster's rap got censored because it was political. Acclaimed won rather easily with their finishing sequence in 10 minutes. I would have preferred LFI in the 4-Way, far more exciting. Maybe this is to build further to the split between Caster and Anthony Bowens, with MVP getting involved. I'm not totally sure. Roosh, he just stays losing. It doesn't matter whether it's a singles match, a tag team match, whatever the case. Roosh is going to lose. I do not understand why he is not pushed harder in AEW. On Collision, FTR backstage were unsure of what's next, promising they would rebuild. They put over the Outrunners, saying they were pulling for them. We were then told that we would hear from the Outrunners. Instead, it was a VHS 4x3 style highlight of their match. That was it. On Rampage, Mark Briscoe beat Arya Davari in 11 minutes. It should not take this long for a recent ROH champion and one of the top babyfaces to beat a jobber in what was, by the way, a terrible match, especially without any reason for the match happening in the first place. On Collision, Briscoe took over an interview for Tomohiro Ishii, who does not speak English, cutting a promo on Chris Jericho, saying Ishii would take the title from him. They're friends and conglomeration members. I get all of that. It's kind of strange for Briscoe, who just had the title taken from him, to be so invested in Ishii winning rather than getting the title back himself. I know some people love these segments with Briscoe. For me, it is very, very indie wrestling. On Dynamite, there was a contract signing for the Jericho-Ishii match next week. Chris took the contract, which Renee said was already reviewed by his lawyers, saying he needed them to look at it again. As Jericho was leaving this random room with the contract, he stopped at a poster of himself to just gaze upon his own face when he saw over his shoulder that Ishii was in the doorway of that room. So Jericho just kept walking with the contract, and Ishii just kept following him in what was basically a slow speed chase with Jericho putting obstacles in his way and Ishii pushing past them, just like you would during a chase in an action movie, right? Like someone's running through a kitchen and they slide a whole thing of plates in front and the person crashes through them, right? Well, Jericho would like move a trash can slowly and then Ishii would just pick it up and move it to the side and keep following him. This went all the way through the crowd into the ring with Ishii backing him into a corner, handing him a pen. He signed, Jericho did, with Learning Tree attacking, Conglomeration saving. And they saved right as Jericho was about to stab him. This was like an SNL skit in that the setup was tremendous. I had a shit-eating grin on my face watching Ishii follow him like that. But the finish was so lazy and typical and uninspired just to get out of the segment. These groups have been feuding for months. First with Briscoe, now with Ishii. There have been multi-person matches, tags, singles. It just feels like it's not going to stop coming out of next week's title match. I was truly loving the way this started. I thought it was the best thing Jericho has done in a long time. And even the way it ended, it still was one of the better things that he has done in a long time. But the end of it was just so frustrating for me.
This is such good shit.
On Dynamite, Jamie Hayter didn't understand why she got cut off by Julia Hart last week. She seemed to blame it on Julia when it was just a video of her. So that didn't exactly make sense. Anyway, she got cut off again by another video of Hart, who was walking in the woods with her bow and arrow as a Brody King voiceover said it was time to come home because she's way more dangerous than ever. She had a bullseye on her last try. This was way less cool than the first two. Neither should lose this match or feud, which really confuses me as to why it's being booked. Hayter is being way underbooked since returning. Hart should not lose immediately when coming back. With such a large roster, it just feels like the wrong wrestling decision unless they have something really smart planned. Also, I hope there's an actual storyline behind this versus she interrupted my promo twice backstage. Like, I want more than that. I just do not understand what they are doing with Jamie Hayter. It does not make any sense.
This is for crap!
On Rampage, Hikaru Shida beat Layla Gray in 5 minutes. So that wraps up the AEW breakdown from Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage in terms of what did not directly have to do building AEW Full Gear that allows us now to transition into our AEW Full Gear Ultimate Preview. We will break down every single match that has been announced. You know how AEW does it. It's quite possible between the publication of this episode and the show itself that there's 3 more 0-hour matches and 1 or 2 more main card matches. Like, all that is possible. So we can only tell you what we know is happening for sure and what it looks like they've been building toward. We can't tell you what we don't know. But we'll break down every single match. We'll talk about what happened on TV building to it. We'll give predictions and picks for each of the matches. And of course, at the end, we will give you a pre-show expectation grade for AEW Full Gear. As of right now, it is a 9-match card with only 8 on the main show. That is hugely positive on its face. Again, we will see if it maintains. They've also announced a special segment for the show, and that'll probably be, of course, the 9th. I don't want to say match, but major segment. I doubt it'll be short is the point I'm getting at. Let's go ahead and talk about the 1 0-hour match first. Big Boom AJ against QT Marshall. So the Costco guys interrupted a private party promo that was going absolutely nowhere on Dynamite, saying they had a special announcement. They did their gimmick with AJ saying his friend, the Rizzler, will ring the bell after the match. Can you guys just fucking defenestrate me at this point? Like, please. AJ's obviously going to win. Let's move on. And let me be clear. I don't dislike these guys. Like, good for them. I just don't really want to spend time breaking down TikTok folks on 0 hour. And if they wanted me to care about this, they needed to do more than one 30-second segment on the Go Home show. Like, I don't know why this guy hasn't been on TV regularly when he does have a legitimate social media following. The kids do as well. I don't get it. There's going to be a Mariah May Championship Champagne celebration. Holy alliteration, Batman, on that one. May put herself over, continuing to push her body in front of Shirakawa's to take all the spotlight on Dynamite. This celebration was announced after they first teamed for a match on Rampage. I don't even know who they're fighting. And then they shook their chests together at the end of it. I shit you not. This is like a regular occurrence right now. I get that Mina does it. It's her thing. We don't need every woman in the entire division doing it. And again, the Silver King, folks, he is no prude. If you told me I could be the backstage interviewer in that segment, I'd be all in.
It should have been me. It should have been me.
At the same time, if they're trying to be the bastion of women's wrestling, which we know they're not, but they try to claim to be, you can't have every woman in your division just shaking their chest every single week just because it's tangentially related to Mina. Again, WWE would get absolutely crucified for this in 2024. Anyway, look, I presume this celebration marks the return of Toni Storm, and they end up fighting at World's End, and maybe even Toni wins the title back. What I've said numerous times on this show is that when Toni does return, I hope it is not the same gimmick. I mean, I hope it is timeless Toni Storm, but I want her to be like a 60s version or a 70s version of Toni Storm. And then every single time she goes away and comes back, she continues progressing, not even until the present, maybe even until the future as well. This is a gimmick that you could run for a long ass time, but they got to do something like that here. I hope, fingers crossed. If it's exactly the same, I'll definitely be frustrated and I will criticize it. Tag Team Championship, Private Party, the Outrunners, Kings of the Black Throne, and the Acclaimed in a four-way for, of course, Private Party's tag team titles. I could do without Acclaimed in this match, but it is a strong foursome overall. You all know, longtime listeners of the show, if the Silver King had the book, Kings of the Black Throne would win because they're by far the best of the four teams. They should be featured a lot more frequently on television. And yet, Private Party just won the titles. They beat the Young Bucks to do it. The Outrunners can take the fall. Caster can take the fall. Bowens can certainly take the fall. Hell, the way they book Kings of the Black Throne, either of them could take the fall. So Private Party will get the dub here, and there's really not that much more to discuss about it because they haven't built any storylines. It was really just the qualifiers. The TNT Championship will be on the line. Jack Perry defending against Daniel Garcia. On Collision, Garcia submitted Johnny TV in 9 minutes as Perry pulled Daddy Magic away from commentary for a backstage attack. There was an awful cut from that attack to what was clearly a pre-taped beatdown where Perry chained Matt Menard to the back of his scapegoat bus. Something, by the way, a chain that he easily could have just taken off over his head. Garcia saved his friend, so the faces then chained Jack to the hood of his own bus and drove him out of the arena. This concluded on Dynamite with Perry tied to a chair. Garcia threw a bucket of water on him, saying Perry tried to take Menard's life. Jack basically tried to get him to go crazy, but Danny refused, so he spit in his face. Jack did. Garcia came back with a crowbar. Of course, he didn't hit the guy who he could easily knock out with it. Instead, he hit the light of the vehicle once and the hood twice, and then threw the crowbar away. And Jack said, "That's it." And I said, "Thank you," because that's exactly what I was thinking. That's it. This certainly leads one to believe Perry might actually retain the title, but I just cannot see how that would be the right booking decision unless someone surprising comes in to get his back and advance this into a 2-on-2 storyline. The Elite are gone. Okada is going to be involved in the Continental Classic soon, taking the title off Perry and giving Garcia a run coming off the MJF feud. That has always made the most sense. Plus, I really don't want this to go on any longer. I was ready to switch my pick to Jack, thinking they would simply rematch at World's End. But Full Gear is in New Jersey, close-ish to the home of Garcia, which is Buffalo, New York. And it would make so much more sense to put him over in the Northeast as opposed to Orlando, Florida. So I'm going to stick with Garcia as my pick to win the title here. But my confidence level is pretty much as low as it is for any match on this card. And again, if Perry does somehow win, it cannot be from like a crucifix pinning combination or beating Garcia clean. It has to be someone coming in, getting his back, distracting Garcia, costing him, and giving him a legitimate reason to get a rematch for the title. The TBS Championship will be on the line. Mercedes Moné against Chris Statlander. On Collision, Stat put over Moné backstage. She said she was dangerous when her back is against the wall. Then she promised to win their match. Shida wished her luck, wanting to be the first challenger. Stat instead decided, well, if you want to challenge me for the title, let's just fight not for the title on Dynamite. Two baby faces, no reason. Why not make this a tag team match with Stat and Shida against Moné and Camille? That way, when the faces win, Shida could step up as a challenger for the title afterward, or so that Shida could take the fall with Moné getting a big win before the show. Both would have been better. Neither happened. We got Stat and Shida Nice work from both of them, by the way. Stat hit Wednesday Night Fever for the win. She lifted Shida with a handshake after the bell as Monet and Camille in an arm sling entered. Mercedes, I don't know what is going on with her creative recently. She tried to do a local sports team's Heat promo.
Yeah, all your sports teams, they're all failures.
I love playing that drop. Then she demanded Camille attack them with one arm. She swung only to get easily thrown out of the ring, literally on the arm. Monet jumped on Stat's back thrice, trying for a backstabber, only for Stat to grab her, flip her over, and hit Wednesday Night Fever. This segment was awful. The Camille spot was nonsensical unless she's turning on Mercedes literally next week. And even if she did, you wouldn't believe her as a challenger because she's looked pathetic since the day she arrived. I don't know what the hell they are doing. It is no longer even fair to put Camille in the same breath as Raquel Rodriguez. And we've been criticizing Raquel's booking for weeks as well. Camille might be the worst booked heavy of all time. And I am not exaggerating when I say that.
That is one big pile of shit.
The end with Stat overpowering Monet and hitting Fever was kind of cool. It was also a nice, quick go-home moment. It also gave away the result of the match, having Chris get over here. So I have Monet, of course, retaining the TBS championship. Maybe Camille finally gets involved and actually helps her win a match, and that's the reason Stat loses. But then you would say, okay, so then you go to a Stat and Camille match. But Stat already beat her ass clean in like 5 minutes. So where do you go after this? I can't even begin to tell you. Roderick Strong is going to fight MJF on Collision. Strong cut a promo about cutting a promo on Wednesday. On Dynamite, Adam Cole criticized MJF for avoiding him while putting over Strong for qualifying. Kyle O'Reilly interrupted to zero pop, telling Cole to end the MJF obsession because the guy is like 3 steps ahead of him and more evil than Cole ever could be. And that's a good thing, according to Kyle. Zero crowd reaction to that as well. MJF later threw some change at a hobo in a tape promo where he said Cole filled the gaps in Strong's soul, which is what he did to MJF, only to prove out as a fraud. MJF said he's glad that he's fighting Strong first, so Cole can watch him suffer before getting sent back to his white trash trailer park. He even brought up Strong's mom shooting his dad, which is a story you can read online if you want, but was immensely weird to add as the final note of the go-home build for a story that is not even about Strong. It's about Cole and MJF. But Strong's been open about it. It is a tragic-ass story. Again, super odd to just throw it in there when the audience doesn't know anything about it. It was solid kind of from MJF, but nothing too notable, unfortunately, and we'll come back to him in a moment. Strong later cut a promo on the stage saying he feels sorry for MJF because he's had to earn everything in his life while MJF throws temper tantrums to get his way. Strong promised to break his back and leave him humble. Jabroni. He had a good run of promos doing the next Strong stuff, but now it's back to the guy who struggles to believably emote on the mic. That's unfortunate. I can't believe they gave this match 3 segments of build while not doing go-homes for multiple other matches, at least not on the main show. Unfortunately, nothing they did here made me care 1 iota more about the match, and MJF's entire shtick is so damn tired right now. It's like that scene in Waiting at the end where that kid Mitch shits on Justin Long's character, I think Dean maybe, Ryan Reynolds' character, Mond. He's like, oh yeah, real cool, real edgy, man. That's the way MJF comes out right now.
Always gotta be right with your little quips. We get it, man. You're fucking edgy and cool. Yeah, you're the coolest fucking guy at Shenanigans. Woo!
Now, obviously, I cut that off before the punchline because I'm not going to play that on this show, but that movie, by the way, is fantastic, and that scene is excellent as well. The idea of having MJF not be on TV for a month while building a pay-per-view match was simply ridiculous. They should have just waited, no pun intended, for this to happen. I understand World's End is probably where they want MJF and Cole. Maybe consider doing MJF and Strong there and doing MJF and Cole after the fact, or don't even involve Strong at all. Have Cole fail to get the opportunity to fight him and then come up with another way that he goes and gets the match, which you're going to have to do anyway here. So just the whole thing has been a mess, and really all of MJF segments, all the tape segments from his fake mansion that looks like Dracula lives there. Like, they've all been weird. I don't care about the match. I would guess many of you don't either. I do expect MJF to win and fight Cole at World's End, where I guess Cole beats him I don't even know anymore. Will Ospreay is going to fight Kyle Fletcher. We got the go home for this last week. To be fair, they did the in-ring segment where they repeated their problems with each other, but there was nothing specific to them on Dynamite other than the fact that they were in the opening match together. Given Ospreay is like your best babyface by a mile right now, gets the loudest reactions out of anyone on your show, probably would have behooved them to do a backstage promo or an in-ring promo after the match or something with him, but they decided not to. This is probably the most difficult match to predict because on one hand, Fletcher should win. If you're going to turn on a guy and beat the shit out of him, then that has to be your crowning achievement moment. And then you have Ospreay come back and get the dub afterward. On the other hand, again, the creative in this company is not going well and the fans need someone to latch onto. And if you have Mox running roughshod over the main event, and you have the Continental Classic about to begin, you gotta give Ospreay something significant. So logic dictates that Fletcher win this match and build his resume. I'm gonna go the other way and pick Ospreay to get the dub because look, he did get the shit kicked out of him. He had an entire faction turn on him along with someone he was trying to build up in Fletcher. And Ospreay kind of needs to get his, given, let's not forget, he just lost the last title that he had, and he's lost a couple matches recently that we expected he might win. So that's why I'm going to go with Will in this spot. We also have Jay White against Hangman Page. They cut screaming back and forth tape promos at one another in that classic AEW style where they somehow know what the other is saying despite everything being taped and happening separately. The gimmick going into the match is that White had Page's number his entire career, and I was just frustrated that neither of these guys were on the go-home show. You want to talk about characters who are over with your audience? Page is a heel, White is a babyface. Both are immensely over. It completely works, and yet they did these quick taped things. There's no collision, so you just get the match. And they've missed a lot of TV, by the way, Hangman in particular. So we come into it, and we're like, oh, what's going to happen here that's special? Oh, by the way, this is another reason why I picked Ospreay in the prior match against Fletcher, because let's just kind of recount briefly. MJF, heel. Here, I have Page winning, who, of course, is a heel. You can't tell the story of this guy's had my number his entire career and then lose again, because then what does Hangman do? I mean, he just lost other matches recently where you're like, I thought they were building this guy up coming out of the Swerve match. You can't have him lose everything. So even though Jay White could step up, certainly, as a babyface challenger for Mox, I see this going a little bit longer between the both of them. That makes the most sense. So Hangman wins. So again, MJF, Hangman, Ospreay. So that's the one babyface Ospreay. Let's move to Swerve Strickland against Bobby Lashley. On Rampage, MVP cut a backstage promo about Swerve being arrogant and stupid, thinking he can take down the Hurt Syndicate 1-on-3 in the parking lot on Dynamite. MVP announced Lashley would make his in-ring debut that night. So Swerve sucker punched him with commentary telling us he used a chain because cameras barely showed it. Terrible production not making that clear. Also totally nonsensical is wasting Lashley's in-ring debut on TV with zero notice rather than having it be at Full Gear as you promoted. MVP later tried to sneak attack a dude who was wearing Swerve's jacket. It wasn't him, but he got hit in the gut anyway. On Dynamite, Lashley destroyed two jobbers, one of whom was Cheeseburger, in a couple minutes. This was not worth giving away Lashley's debut to do it in front of 2,500 fans in Reading, Pennsylvania. No offense to Reading, Pennsylvania, the home, I believe, of Yingling. So shout out Yingling. Lashley is also still going by Almighty. So AEW basically cloned these characters like you would in a video game, upped Shelton's skill level, and did a replace for business to Syndicate. That's what they're doing right now in AEW with this group. Swerve again got up on them, sliding out from the ring with a chain and striking all three of the guys in the face before hitting House Call and Swerve Stomp on Lashley. The Swerve Stomp would generally make even less sense on someone like Lashley, though he did take a chain punch to the face, two of them actually, one earlier than one immediately before this, and the House Call. So him sitting up being woozy, I guess it was okay. But man, they gotta stop using that move as Swerve's finisher. House Call, JML Driver, whatever that's now called, both of them are way, way better. Swerve, I believe, got the best reaction on the entire show. That was an immense positive. And I do believe that this match between them will rock and could probably be one of the stellar moments on Full Gear. Either way, Lashley probably needs to be winning this match. Whether it's numbers advantage, a surprise member joining Hurt Syndicate, potentially Caster, maybe someone else that's a surprise coming in and joining their group, whatever the case might be. I don't know how you debut this group and then have Lashley lose what's really his debut match, even though they gave it away. You had Swerve go up big on the go home. We've seen what that usually means in WWE. I don't know if that carries over to AEW, but probably something I should have been keeping track of over the last 5 years. But again, Swerve went over big on the go home. You have to have Lashley win this match. So again, when we're talking about why Ospreay is going to beat Fletcher, it's because you can't have Lashley, Paige, Fletcher, and MJF all win the non-title men's singles matches. That's why I do believe that Ospreay going over makes a lot of sense. Let's move to what will surely be the main event of the show. Jon Moxley defending the AEW Championship against Orange Cassidy. Mox said he may have underestimated Orange, and he might actually be a cold-blooded snake. He questioned whether Cassidy would take out Wheeler Yuta as an opponent or treat him like a former student. Mox said he's not cold-blooded. He feels everything: the weight of the AEW title, the dreams of everyone in the company, and the belief of all the fans who see what AEW can be. He promised to smear Orange's blood and their flag in the ring at Full Gear. This was a really strange promo from the standpoint in that half of it was babyface in nature. The whole narrative around AEW and everyone wanting to save the company and improve the company and get all the wrestlers paid, and wrestling will die if AEW doesn't exist. It is so fucking tired at this point. Mox repeated the first half of this again on Dynamite. Cassidy later promised to make an example of Yuta while going at it alone. Conglomeration came in, saying they had his back. Cassidy snapped at them, demanding that they promise to stay away. Orange said it's 1-on-5. He tried acting cool. Didn't look cool. Reminder that Pac has not been on TV in weeks. That did change, but still, he hasn't been there. So it really would be 1-on-4. Orange was just not overly believable in this backstage segment. So the main event of Dynamite was indeed Cassidy against Yuta. Tony Schiavone, who calls every AEW TV show, I believe, asked at the start of the match if everyone noticed Cassidy was wearing black jeans because it stood out to him. Excalibur properly clarified he's done it on occasion, but Orange has actually been wearing black for literal weeks throughout the entire back half of this build. And he was doing it in the Trent feud as well. And he was doing it occasionally even before that as well. His entrance presentation is all dark. It's the entire point of the character shift. Does this guy follow the product? Like, what is Schiavone talking about? Cassidy showed some aggressiveness. He had a quicker and more deliberate kind of offensive pace than he usually does. Yuta caught him with a cross-legged pile driver. That looked cool, but added nothing to the move. Wheeler got cattle mutilation locked in. Orange found the ropes. Yuta swung a chair. Cassidy avoided it and caught him in a rolling cross-legged pinning combination to escape with the win. They stood off after the bell, with Pac returning out of the crowd, beginning an attack. They put Orange's hands in his pockets. Just made me laugh on its own. And then wrapped his arms tight to his body with duct tape. That way Mox could slap him across the face twice as the others pushed him around like they were bullying him. Cassidy, who is now a motivated martyr, did his stupid fucking fake kicks, taking a forearm to the head. Mox then stomped his head once, and they all left to like medium boos. Conglomeration came out. They cut him free. Orange rose to his feet, put on his glasses, and defiantly placed his hands back in his pockets as Mox watched from the crowd.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Commentary said the entire locker room should be out to save him during this attack, and Schiavone was finally right about something. Yes, Orange did tell Conglomeration not to come out under any circumstances. What about the other 85 people backstage? What about any of the women? No, still, the ending was so frustrating. If Death Riders had destroyed Orange and he was bloody and he still got up, okay, cool. Then he looks like a little bit of a badass. Mox slapped him twice, hit him once. He stood up. That's what he should do. He's a professional wrestler. This being the main event feud for a pay-per-view is leaving a lot to be desired, and Dynamite in totality had to be one of AEW's weakest go-home shows ever. This despite the card being immensely strong from a match-by-match standpoint. If I was booking this match, I'd have it start almost identically to how Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed began on Raw. Death Riders are out there with Mox. Conglomeration comes out, beats them all to the back, leaving a true one-on-one plus Marina Shafir being the differentiator. Then, when Shafir gets involved, you bring out Willow Nightingale to a huge pop. She takes her off. They start a feud separately, obviously tangentially related to this, but they start their feud. And then you have Orange and Mox one-on-one, and hopefully Mox beats him clean. But let's just remember, to this point, not a single woman has stepped up to Shafir here, even though she's pretty much done nothing, and she looks like a badass, kind of, but she hasn't done anything where they should be scared of her. I guess the women just don't care about AEW as much as the men do. But that was pretty much the prediction for the match. I mean, I hope that's the booking. I don't know how they're going to book it, but Mox needs to retain the title. I can't imagine a scenario where he, quote unquote, retires Bryan Danielson from a full-time career, runs roughshod over the entire company, talks about changing everything and having this master plan and all this shit, and then drops the AEW title to Orange Cassidy. I just can't see that being the case. Maybe we get Darby Allin coming in and fights off Claudio. That continues. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do. What I do know is Mox walks out of Full Gear with the AEW Championship. Now, to move on from our Ultimate Preview to our pre-show expectation grade, this is kind of an odd show overall, just given some of the names and titles that have been left off the card. There's no International Continental Trios or Women's title on the show. I mean, obviously the TBS title, but not the Women's Championship. May, of course, will have a segment, probably Storm returning. That all will be fine. Only the International title right now has a potential challenger in Ricochet. The others are just like hanging out there in the balance. It's really weird. And there's a lot of men's singles matches without titles on the line, which is totally fine. In fact, I like having non-title singles matches, male and female, on WWE and AEW shows. But the problem is when you have so many titles and they're not being defended, and then you have a ton of one-on-one singles matches, it's like, well, why aren't they involving the titles, right? If all these matches are so important, they should be involving the plethora of championships that you have. Despite that, as I said, this looks to be an extremely solid card. From a wrestling perspective, I mean, there's going to be a number of really good matches, and I can't necessarily tell you right off the top what will definitively be the match of the night. I mean, it'll most likely be Ospreay and Fletcher. It seems like that's what they're going for. I presume MJF and Strong will have a lot of story. White and Page actually could be a sneaky contender for match of the night, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's my favorite match, even if others might prefer Ospreay and Fletcher. Swerve and Lashley, I know I said a few moments ago that it could be match of the night. I don't think it ultimately will be, just given the likely booking of it. Mox and Cassidy, I don't anticipate it at all. I'm not super excited about it. Monet and Stat, I really don't care about either. Perry and Garcia might be good, but I've said that about a lot of Perry matches recently and haven't been enamored with them. Tag team match, I don't care about at all. And as far as AJ and QT go in the 0 hour, I mean, maybe it's fun. It's possible, but it's just a frustrating situation with that, as I kind of explained off the top. And I'll reiterate, no hate towards those guys at all. Like, go do your thing. You know, make your money in your 15 minutes of fame as long as you possibly can. That makes giving a pre-show expectation grade for AEW Full Gear immensely difficult because it is certainly in the B range, right? Normally, with AEW, the floor is a B+, simply because the talent is so high quality. The matches are so well booked from the standpoint of trying to deliver high star ratings and appeal to this audience. But as I go through the card, it's one thing after another that I don't actually care about. I mean, the match I care about the most is probably Swerve and Lashley. It's just because I like both of them. And then Jay and Hangman will probably be the best match, like I just said. But from a storyline standpoint, I don't necessarily care that Page has never beaten White because I haven't seen most of their matches. And I'm someone who watched a ton of New Japan back in the day. I've seen some of them. I just haven't seen all of them is what I'm trying to get at. So I'm going to go off the beaten path for the Silver King when it comes to an AEW pay-per-view. I'm going to give a pre-show expectation grade of an 86 out of 100, a flat B. That gives them a huge runway to exceed expectations and a very easy path towards getting that B+. But I don't know how this show is going to deliver, and it kind of feels like they're holding a lot back for World's End, which you'll remember last year was not the best pay-per-view. So maybe they're trying to flip it a little bit, but Full Gear was always a signature show. And I always expected that it would be really strong when it comes to storylines and stuff. And there might be really good matches, as I said, but the storylines aren't there. And therefore, I have to go with a high B, not a middle B, a high B, but nevertheless, no plus added for that pre-show expectation grade. So with all that said, let's wrap up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. First, with a reminder that we will be back on Saturday night with your AEW Full Gear instant analysis. We'll break down every single match. We'll give you grades for every single match and a final grade as well. All of you who follow us on social media, at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky, will have the opportunity to vote in pre- and post-show polls surrounding the show. In fact, I don't know if Blue Sky has a poll function. You can certainly follow our posts there, but you will not be able to, of course, see a poll if they don't have that functionality. So do that on Twitter at Getting Overcast, and your pre- and post-show polls will factor into our instant analysis podcast after the show goes off the air. Don't forget that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the fight.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. You already know how to follow us on social media. Do that for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all of that good stuff. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major show, and exclusive news posts on Fridays. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We will be back on Saturday with your AEW Full Gear instant analysis, and then on Tuesday with your next WWE show. But at this point, it is time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.